Okay. All right. So I'm going to move quickly to remote monitoring.
Perfect.
A lot of you may not be doing this, but I think it's worthy to talk about because there's some legal quicksands here as well. Again, monitoring tools have skyrocketed since March. Okay. According to one tracking agency, more than 30% of employers have purchased some form of equipment to monitor their employees. Okay, I have a green screen behind me, and it's not a monitoring piece of equipment, right? But in March, when we all bolted, home, I tried to get a green screen. I couldn't get one for 8 weeks. Desk, computers, all these things, are just flying off the shelves. I don't know. I think Jeff mentioned something about Blockbuster, and I thought maybe he mentioned something about stock. And if we just would have known to all invest in Zoom and WebEx, and all these things, we would all be millionaires, guaranteed. So there's still a shortage of these tools. Many of them are still on back order, okay? And according to another study, it's anticipated that nearly 50% of employees are going to spend some sort of their workday working remotely, even after COVID slows down or disappears. Because businesses are finding out, well, maybe I don't need to pay all this rent space. Maybe I can have employees work from home. So the reasons why a business may monitor employees probably hasn't changed during the midst of COVID as opposed to pre-COVID. Okay, the most common reason is going to be to get a handle on the productivity of individuals and the teams, and then how to analyze how employees are spending their day, because you are paying, right? So the latter two items on this slide are new entries where you may want to analyze productivity trends of those who are working in the traditional work environment versus those that are working remotely. You hear all the claims that productivity tends to improve when people are given the opportunity to work remotely. I didn't mention this earlier as part of my sordid past, but I'm a longtime cynic. You just might want to maybe check that out, right? The number one reason I would suspect that businesses are monitoring employees, though, is to protect their data, and nobody's going to blame you for that because it is your data. So with all this remote work going on, many employers are tracking things like, and some of these are kind of creepy, right? Are keystrokes, measuring activity in certain applications and websites, which is not creepy, right? Here comes the creepy part. And even taking photos to see if their employees are sitting at their laptops. I get it, but be careful there. So monitoring does come with some legal risks, as I alluded to earlier, mainly because so many businesses allow their employees to use their personal devices rather than the company provided devices. And you can avoid a lot of these issues if you just move away from that. So, because if I'm using my personal device for work, and then I periodically connect to non-work sites or non-work websites, rather, you can see how the employer capturing that information might be problematic. Okay. You have to have a written policy and you have to communicate. I'm going to just keep doubling down on what Jeff has to say. Communicate. You cannot over communicate in this era right now. Legal experts say that your best defense is to be completely transparent about what you're doing. When you log on to Zoom right now, because, Zoom had to catch up. They weren't expecting this boom. They've increased their security and all that. Now, when you hit the record on the Zoom, it now hits your desktop and says, this is being recorded. And then it gives you the option to bail out or to stay. I can guarantee you the reason why they did that is because there's lawsuits that are popping up from students and from employees who are saying my employer or my school didn't have a right to capture, what I'm doing, in my private space. And the courts are going to have to fend all this off, right? But again, to Jeff's point again, this also goes beyond the law. It goes back to proper level of communication, but also building trust within your workforce. Over communicate your monitoring procedures and have the employees acknowledge these procedures in writing. Okay. And not just once. If you have them sign the document that they acknowledge that there's a policy and that they've had a chance to ask questions and that they understand it, but you only do that once every 2 years, it's not going to help you as much as it could if there's a challenge. So just put some reminders on the calendar to do it every quarter, every 6 months. I wouldn't go over a year. But one way you can maybe just lock it in is that every time it's time to do a performance review, since we normally do those annually, that's the time when you can re-up all these policies and get new signature and new signature dates on those documents. So if an employee's been with you 6 years, you want 6 years of those documents with their signature acknowledging that they have received these policies and any updates. So to the best of your ability, try to eliminate any surprises in the workplace. Okay, you'll consistently find that when employees are surprised by management's actions, they get frustrated, the morale drops, and sometimes paper starts flying, and I'm talking about lawsuits. So here's the best way to think about monitoring employees. If the purpose of monitoring is to benefit employees, it's a good thing. If it's to evaluate employees, it's potentially dangerous. But if it's to penalize employees, it's probably a bad idea. So monitoring employees is never a substitute for the traditional employee management engagements. Never. If you can provide your employees with company tools, do so, okay? Because this is going to significantly reduce issues that come with monitoring employees who are using their own equipment. Because guess what? When they're using your equipment, they don't have an expectation of privacy. You give them the option or they're using their own, it starts to get gray. Your policy document needs to explain what you will do if you inadvertently come in contact with private information from your employee's equipment, because it may happen. My former employer gave a $35 stipend if we used our own phone and as our work phone, with the promise that the emails and the text messages would be split into the appropriate server. Again, me being cynical, I'm not falling for the okie doke. Yeah, maybe it splits into the right server, maybe it doesn't. But here's the thing I had to be concerned about as a city government employee and as an HR director. If my phone got subpoenaed because the lawyer on the other side found out that I was using my phone for dual purposes, he's going to subpoena or she's going to subpoena my phone. And if you think the courts are going to let you go through your phone and remove anything that you don't want them to see, I got another thing to tell you. Okay, they'll just tell you, we'll figure it out. Give us the phone. All right, so legal issues are beginning to arise around video conferencing to conduct business, specifically related to recording images and voices even of employees without their permission. Plus, in some states, wiretapping laws are restricting employers from recording voices or images. So you have to be careful. Again, partner up with your HR or your legal reps.